In the meantime, and you are well aware, we did everything we could, absolutely everything we could, to resolve this problem peacefully. We've been involved in negotiations on finding peaceful resolution to this difficult conflict, but behind our backs, they were preparing a different scenario. The promises by the Western leaders, their words about aspirations for peace in the Donbass. As we have seen now, it was all lies. They were just trying to win time. They were turning a blind eye on the political assassinations, on reprisals of the Kyiv regime, on tortures on the believers. They were encouraging more and more the Ukrainian neo-Nazis on terrorist attacks against Donbass. In Western academies and colleges, they were training neo-Nazi battalions personnel, they were supplying weapons, and I would like to emphasize it, even before the special military operation, the Kyiv was negotiating with the West about air defense, about combat planes and other heavy equipment and vehicles, and we also remember about attempts by the Kyiv regime to acquire nuclear weapons, and they were stating it publicly. The United States and NATO were promptly deploying their troops and army bases, secret biolabs near our borders. They were maneuvering and learning about the future theater of war, and they were preparing, enslaved by them, Ukraine to the big war, and now they are admitting it publicly, openly. It's as if they are proud of their treacherous behavior, and they were calling Normandy format bluff as performance. And all this time, while Donbass was on fire, while the blood was spilled, while Russia was sincerely, I would like to emphasize this, sincerely was looking for a peaceful resolution, they were playing with the lives of the people. They were cheating in this game of cards, and these disgusting methods was tried out before. They played the same double game before when they destroyed Yugoslavia, Iraq, Libya, Syria, and they will never wash away this shame. The notions of dignity, of honor, is not something they understand. It's not for them. For long years of colonialism, dictate, hegemony, they are used to the notion that they can do anything. They don't care about the world. And in the same manner, like masters, they treat the peoples of their own countries, because they have been lying to them as well by the stories they were telling them about how they were looking for peace, how they were sticking to the Security Council resolutions on Donbass. The peoples of the West are now used as a tool of lies, and we firmly stand not only for our own interests, but for our position that is signifying that in the modern world we should not divide the planet into civilized countries and others. There should be no exceptionalism. We were open for constructive dialogue with the West. We were insisting that both Europe and the entire world need indivisible, equal system of security for all the countries. And for many years, we were suggesting to our partners to discuss this idea together and to work on its implementation. But in response, we were receiving only hypocritical reaction. These were words, but there were also actions. Expansion of NATO to our borders, establishment of the new anti-rocket defense in Europe and Asia. They decided to cover themselves with this umbrella. They were deploying military contingents not only near the borders of Russia, and I would like to emphasize this, and you are well aware of this. Not a single country in the world has as many military bases abroad like the United States of America. They have hundreds of them. I am emphasizing these hundreds of bases all over the world. Entire planet is peppered with them. Just look at the world map. The world was witnessing how they were withdrawing from arms agreements, like the rocket agreements that we have them. They were unilaterally withdrawing from the agreements that preserved peace on the planet. Why did they do this? It was not by chance. And finally, in December of 2021, we officially sent to the United States and to NATO draft agreements on the security guarantees. But on all the key items of this draft agreement, we received the refusal to discuss that. And then we understood that they agreed to follow the path of aggression, and they did not want to stop. The threat was getting bigger and bigger. The information that we were getting left no doubt that by February of 2022, they were preparing a punitive operation in Donbass. Back in 2014, the Kiev regime was using artillery, tanks and planes against Donbass. We all remember those images when they were bombing Donetsk from the air. They were launching airstrikes against Donetsk and other cities. Back in 2015, again, they attempted to attack Donbass directly. And they continued to blockade, to shell, to launch serious attacks against civilians, and it contradicted absolutely the resolutions adopted by the Security Council of the UN. Absolutely, completely. But everyone pretended like nothing was going on. And I would like to reiterate this. It was them who unleashed this war. And we just used the force, and we are using this to stop the war. Those who planned a new offensive against Donbass, Donetsk, Lugansk, they understood clearly that the next target will be Crimea and Sevastopol, and we understood this, and we knew about this. And now, in Kiev, they are openly talking about these goals, so now they are out in the open. Something that we knew long time ago. We are protecting the lives of the people, our home, and the goal of the West is unbridled power. They have already spent more than $150 billion to supply weapons to the Kiev regime. Just compare. According to the Economic Cooperation and Development Organization, to help the poorest countries in the world, G7 allocated in 2020 and 2021 some $60 billion. Do you see this? They spent 150 for the war and the poorest countries. Allegedly, they are taking care about. They have allocated only 60. And they demand to follow them blindly, those countries who they pay to, and how they can talk about sustainability, about the environmental development. Where has it gone? And they are not stopping this flow of money to support war, and they are spending more money on coup in the other countries all across the world. At the recent conference in Munich, they were blaming Russia in all kinds of things. One gets an impression that they did that only to make everyone forget what the so-called West has been doing in the last decade. But it was them who let this genie out of the bottle. Entire regions were immersed into chaos by estimates of American experts as a result of those wars. And we are not the ones who came up with these numbers. Americans are presenting these numbers as a result of the wars unleashed by the U.S. after 2001. Some 900,000 people died. More than 38 million became refugees. And they want to erase it from the memory of humankind. They are pretending as if it has not happened. But no one will forget it in the world, with so many casualties and so many tragedies, but they don't care about them because what they have at stake is trillions of dollars and the opportunity to continue to steal from everyone, hiding behind the words about freedom and democracy by imposing totalitarian values that they call liberal, putting labels on entire countries and peoples by publicly insulting their leaders. They are suppressing freedom of thought in their own countries. They try to distract their own people from the corruption scandals, because we can all see it on the screens on television, from growing inner social, international and other kind of problems. Back in the 1930s, they led the way for Nazis to take power in Germany. And in our time, they started building anti-Russia from Ukraine. It's nothing new. People who know a little bit of history, they are perfectly aware of what's going on. It can be traced back to the 19th century. It was happening in Austria-Hungary, in Poland, and in other countries with the only goal to take away these historic territories that are now called Ukraine from our country. That was their goal. There is nothing new about it. Absolutely nothing. They are just repeating old ways. The West expedited the implementation of this project. They supported the coup in 2014. It was a bloody coup, anti-state coup, anti-constitutional coup, and it's like nothing happened, like it's a normal way of things. They even informed everyone how much money they spent on this. And they used Russophobia, aggressive nationalism, as an ideology. Recently, one of the battalions of Ukraine, it's shameful for us to hear. They started calling one of the battalions Edelweiss, like a Hitlerite division that was involved in executing prisoners of war and killing Jews all across Europe. And the National Guard of Ukraine and Army of Ukraine are using Podkop and other SS divisions who have covered their hands in blood up to their elbows. They use marking of Wehrmacht and Nazi Germany on their equipment. Neo-Nazis, they are not even hiding who they consider themselves, who they descended from. And it's astonishing that no one in the West is noticing this, taking notice of this. Why? Because they do not care. They don't care about who to place a bet on when it comes to fighting Russia, fighting us. The main thing is that they are waging war against us, against Russia, and that means they need to use everyone. Terrorists, neo-Nazis, devil if they have to. The main thing for them is to follow their will and to use their weapons against Russia. This project of anti-Russia is part of the revenge that they are taking against our country. They are creating hotbeds of instability near our borders. Back then, in the 1930s, and already now, their idea has remained the same, to turn to direct aggression against the East, to flame the wars in Europe with someone else's hands by eliminating competition.
Now, we're not at war with the people of Ukraine. This is something I've said many times. The people of Ukraine are no hostages to the Kiev regime and their Western masters, who have effectively occupied the country in a political, military and economic sense. For decades, they've been destroying the Ukrainian industry, exploiting Ukrainian natural resources, and this led to an escalation and to an increased poverty and inequality. And of course, this is something that feeds the feelings that fuel the war. It is truly a sad situation where people are being sacrificed for this war. The responsibility for stoking this war is entirely on the shoulders of the Western elites and the Kiev regime, who views the Ukrainian people not as their own people, but as someone else. And they're not serving their national interests, but Western interests. The West is using Ukraine as a tool, as a testing ground, and as a launch pad against us. One thing should be clear. The more long-range weapons are sent to Ukraine, the longer we will have to push the threat away from our borders. That's natural. The Western elites do not conceal their goal of effecting a strategic defeat on Russia. That is their words. That means that they want to take us off the map. They want to turn the local conflict into a global confrontation. And this is how we understand this. And we will respond adequately. Because this is now about the very existence of our country. But they cannot ignore the fact that Russia cannot be defeated on the battlefield. So they're waging increasingly aggressive information attacks, first of all targeting the young generations, lying on every step, distorting historical truth, attacking our culture, the Russian Orthodox Church, and other traditional religious institutions in our country. Now look at what they're doing with their own peoples. They're destroying the institution of family, their cultural and historical identity, and various perversions with regard to children up to pedophilia are accepted as the new norm, and priests are forced to recognize and officiate same-sex weddings. People can live however they want, and we in Russia have never intruded into people's private life, and we're not going to do that. But what we want to say is maybe they should take a look in the scripture, into the holy book of any great religion. It says that the family is a union between woman and man. And these holy texts are now being increasingly doubted in the West. The Anglican Church is now considering the idea of a gender-neutral God. What can we say? God forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. Millions of people in the West realize that they're being led towards a spiritual catastrophe. People are going mad, and this does not seem to be treatable. But this is their problems, and it is our duty to protect our children, and it's something that we are going to do, to protect them from degradation. It is obvious that the West will be trying to shatter our unity and support traitors who despise their native land and who want to have a profit on their country's troubles. Those who choose the path of traitorship, who carry out terrorist attacks against our country, who undermine the security and unity and integrity of our country, are being supported by the Kiev regime, but we're not going to engage in witch hunts. We're not going to exact revenge on those who took the wrong step, who made the wrong choice. What's most important is that Russian people give a moral assessment to those actions, and we're very proud that our multinational people and the majority of Russian citizens have adopted a principled position with regard to the special military operation. They understood what we're doing and they supported our actions in Donbass. This was a true show of patriotism, of the feelings that are historically characteristic of our people. It's something that we see in our history, and it's a way that we see that our fate is the fate of our country. They're one and the same. Friends, I would like to thank all of you and the entire people of Russia, to say thank you to the soldiers and officers in the army, in the navy, in all parts and units of the armed forces, to the volunteers of Donetsk and Lugansk, to those who fight as part of the Barts Army Reserve. And I apologize for not being able to list all of the parts of our society. When I prepared the speech, I had a long list of the heroic units, and then I decided to take it out because, as I've said, it's not possible to name every one of them. So I don't want to leave anybody out. So I bow down before the parents and spouses of those who fight in the special military operation, the doctors and nurses, the sanitary instructors and the railway workers and truck drivers who carry supplies for the front line, for the builders who restore civilian facilities and those working several shifts at defense manufacturing facilities, and those who strive to make our country more secure and more prepared. I want to say thank you to the teachers who take care of the younger generation, especially those who work in the difficult and dangerous conditions near the front lines, and various cultural figures who come to the front line to cheer up our soldiers, the volunteers and journalists, first of all the military correspondents who risk their lives at the front line to tell the world the truth, the leaders of Russian traditional religions, and especially military priests whose sermons inspire our soldiers and officers, civil servants and business people, those who carry out their civil and human duty. Now, a special thank you to those who live in the Donetsk and Lugansk republics, the Zaporozhye and Kherson regions. You decided what future you want to have at the referendums. You made a clear choice despite the terror and the threats from the neo-Nazis. When military action was close to your homes, but your decision to be with Russia was strong, to be with your native land. We have already begun, and we will continue. I want to emphasize that this response from the audience to people living in the Donetsk and Lugansk republics and the Kherson and Zaporozhye regions was unprompted. Thank you. So we will continue to scale up programs for providing social support in these new regions of the Russian Federation. We will restore the industries and bring back jobs, ports on the Sea of Azov, and build a modern link with the rest of Russia. Our joint efforts will make this possible. The constituent entities of the Russian Federation are now directly supporting urban and rural localities and the Donetsk and Lugansk republics and the Zaporozhye and Kherson regions like brothers. And so we've become even stronger. And we will do everything we can so that peace settles once again on this land and we are secure once again. This and our ancestors and the future of our children and grandchildren. Restoring historical truth is what our soldiers, our heroes, are fighting for today. Friends, I want to pay tribute to those who gave their lives fighting for our country, and to the civilians who died at the hands of the neo-Nazi. Thank you. Now, we realize, and I realize, how unbearable it is for the families, the spouses and parents of fallen soldiers, but they made it possible that they grow up heroes, just like during the Second World War, when their ancestors fought against the Nazis. And their spirit and their sacrifice is something that we remember, and it is our duty to support their families and to help their children to get a decent education and a profession. And every such family needs to be in the focus of our state, needs to be cared for, and all its needs need to be met with a prompt response. I suggest that we establish a state foundation that will support families of fallen soldiers and veterans of the special military operation. It will coordinate the provision of social, psychological, and medical aid, and providing resorts, vacations, and help people get jobs and improve their professional skills, get new professions. And an important task for the foundation would be organizing home-based care for everyone who needs it to a high level of quality. So I request the government, all those tasked with social policy, and the regions of the Russian Federation to make sure that this happens. The procedure should be open and transparent, and the procedure should be simple, on a one-stop basis, without any red tape. So every family, I want to emphasize this, every family of a fallen soldier, every veteran should have their own personal social worker or coordinator. Who will solve all the problems in real time. We must make sure that this foundation is operational during this year in all regions. We have frameworks to support veterans and people who took part in local conflicts, and I think that this foundation may take up these issues in the future. We need to discuss that, and I request the government to do that.
But this does not lift responsibility from other state agencies. I expect every region, every department to pay the closest attention to the veterans of former soldiers and officers and their family. In this regard, I would like to thank the heads of the regions, mayor of the cities, who meet with people, who travel to the line of contact, to the front line, and they support their fellow citizens. And here is what I would like to emphasize especially. Now, draftees and volunteers and officers and soldiers of the army are thinking about the supplies for them and about the remuneration for their wounds and injuries that they receive, the health care and the requests that the governors are receiving and the ombudsman on the rights of human rights, we receive a lot of these requests, and it means that a lot of problems are still not resolved. So we need to take care of every individual case. And obviously, serving in the zone of special military operation is a heavy burden for everyone involved, and they are taking risks for their lives on a daily basis. So I think for all the military servicemen, for all the participants of the special military operation, including volunteers, they should receive holidays at least once a year, no less than 14 days, and the travel. As you know, we have approved by the presidential decree the plan to develop the armed forces for up until 2025, and the work on its implementation is in progress. We are introducing necessary adjustments, and our next steps
important to re-equip our forces and nuclear forces. We have to reach a level of preparation of at least 90% in all the areas of the military force. The officers we have demonstrated a great ability to carry out their duties, and they however, they need to get further training. This is quite necessary in the military area as well as in civilian forces, in all the decision bodies. Those men need to understand that their country is in a position to use the best they can give, and we have the technical means, we have high-quality forces, very much superior to their counterparts in other countries, but we need to step up the production of our weapons. And we need to do this based on our scientific and technical means. We will have more procurement by the army. Our industry armament uses young talent from people who, in line with our tradition, will do everything they can towards the victory. We're going to reinforce the workers' collectives. We're going to increase the salaries so that the armament industry can provide housing to its staff at prices which the government will subsidize. We had this discussion. This program needs to be developed, and we're working on it in full detail so that the subsidized housing is developed in the where the armament industry is based, and also where research and development are carried out. It's not exactly a military action. It's It's a
punishing themselves. They provoke the price growth, job losses, shutdown of enterprises, energy crisis in their countries, and they are telling their citizens, and we hear that, they are saying that Russians are to blame for all of this. What tools they were using against us in this sanction aggression, they were trying to disrupt the ties with the Russian companies, to switch off the financial system from the communication channels, to destroy our economy, to stop us from accessing the import markets, to stop us from receiving income. They were robbing us of our currency reserves. They were attempting to destroy ruble and to provoke destructive inflation. But again, those anti-Russian sanctions are just means, and the goal, as the Western leaders are saying themselves, and I'm quoting them, to make them suffer, to make our people suffer. So here are these humanists. They want to make people suffer, to destabilize our society from the inside. But all this was in vain. Russian economy and this system of governance were much more durable than the West believed. Thanks to our joint effort of our government, of the parliament, of the Bank of Russia, the regions, and the business circles of employees, we managed to achieve sustainability of our economic situation. We have protected our citizens. We have preserved jobs. There are no shortages on the market, including the most important items. We have supported financial system and the entrepreneurs who are investing in their businesses, and they are investing in the development of the country. Last year, we have started a package of measures to support business and economy for a total sum of some 1 trillion rubles. And we have not printed anything to achieve this. Everything is based on a durable market basis, market foundation. After 2022, the GDP has decreased. So I heard that I should say this. I think yesterday it was published. In due time, everything is according to plan. But they said that we were going to decrease by 20-25%. Recently, they were giving a number of 2.9, 2.5. But the gross domestic product of 2022 decreased by 2.1%. This is the latest data. In last February, March, they were saying that the economy will crush Russian businesses. They changed the logistic ties. They have strengthened ties with reliable partners, and there is a majority of such partners across the world, and the share of Russian rubles in our international settlements, if we compare it with December 2021, has doubled, and now it's 1/3 of all the settlements, and together with the currencies of friendly states, it is more than half of all the settlements. And we will continue to work with our partners on creating sustainable and safe system of international settlements that would be independent from dollar and other Western reserve currencies. Because with these policies by the Western elites and Western leaders, it will lose its universal role. With their own hands, they are doing this. Not us. We're decreasing the settlements in dollars and other so-called universal currencies. They are doing this with their own hands. You know, there is this saying, cannons instead of butter. Of course, the defense of the country is the priority, but when we are trying to resolve these issues, we should not repeat our own previous mistakes. We should not destroy our own economy. We have everything we need to preserve our security and to continue to develop our country, and we will continue to follow this logic. And many basic civilian areas of Russian economy has not increased their output. Housing, for the first time in the modern history of our country, the construction of housing exceeded more than 100 million square meters. As for our farming last year, it doubled its growth. Thank you very much. I would like to bow down to our farmers. Russian farmers has a record harvest, more than 150 tons of grain, more than 100,000 tons of wheat. Till the end of the 30th June of 2023, we will be able to reach a total export volume of grain to 55 or even 60 million tons. 10, 15 years, it seemed impossible. It seemed like something that is impossible to achieve. Maybe you remember, and some of you probably might, not that long ago. We have Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Agriculture. We had 60 million in total, and now 55 or 60 we are going to export. That would be our export potential. I'm convinced that we have every opportunity to achieve the same breakthroughs in other areas. There were no decreases in the job market, and we have decreased unemployment. Even against all the difficulties, our employment market has become more comfortable, has become better than it was before. Before the pandemic, we had 4.7%, the unemployment rate. And now it's 3.7, I think. Is it? 3.7. That's the record low number. The economy of Russia has overcome the risks it has. Yes, a lot of them. A lot of those risks were impossible to calculate in advance. We had to react on the fly whenever we faced it, both at the state level and at the businesses level. We were trying to make prompt decisions, and I would like to mention the private initiatives of the medium-sized and small-sized businesses. We should not forget about this. We have evaded too much red tape and regulating the economy to make it more dependent on the state. What's also important, the decrease in the economy was only in the second quarter, and in the third and in the fourth quarter, we have seen the growth. We have reached the new cycle of the economic growth. Per estimates of the experts, of the pundits, its structure is now changing, reaching a new quality level. We are looking at the new global markets, including our own inner market, the scientific and technology employees, not only selling our resources abroad, but achieving additional value. It allows us to tap into the great potential that Russia has in all the areas. Already this year, we can forecast the growth of the inner demand. I'm sure that our companies will use this opportunity to increase the output, the production of the most in-demand commodities, to fill in the niches that were elaborated after the Western companies have withdrawn. Now we can see the full picture. We understand that the structural problems that we need to resolve in logistics and technology, in finance, in personnel. We kept talking about the need to change the structure of our economy over the last years. And now these changes, it's something that we must do. And it changes the situation for the better in this particular case. We understand what needs to be done for the development of Russia, sovereign development of Russia, despite any pressure from the outside and any threats from the outside, with the safe guarantees of security and interests of the country. And I would like to draw your attention, I would like to emphasize this. The gist of our work is not to adjust to the current conditions. Strategic goal is to bring our economy to the new level, new horizons. Everything is changing now, and everything is changing fast. This time is not only a time of challenges, but it is also a time of opportunities. It is true today. And our future depends on how we will implement it. We should get rid of all the differences, all kind of personal problems that we might have in our state bodies. Everything should be aimed at achieving a goal. Successful launch of Russian companies' small family enterprises will be a victory to us. New state-of-the-art factories and new roads will be a victory to us. New schools, new kindergartens will be victory for us. New scientific breakthroughs, new innovations and inventions will be a victory. It's something that everyone can contribute to achieve our own common goal.
Now, what areas do we need to focus on in terms of the cooperation between the state and the businesses? We need to expand promising economic ties and build new logistics corridors. The decision has already been made to extend the Moscow-Kazan highway to Yekaterinburg, Chelyabinsk-Tyumen, and then to Irkutsk and to Vladivostok, connecting with Kazakhstan and China, which will expand our ties with Asian countries. We will develop the ports, the Black Sea and the Sea of Azov, and this is already the focus of some parts of our governments, and we will strengthen the North-South corridor this year. We will expand our channels for new types of vessels connecting to Iran, Pakistan, and we will continue to develop our ties and develop the corridors. The eastern direction of our railways, the Trans-Siberian Railway and the Baikal-Amur main line, as well as the Northern Sea route. This will be beneficial not only for the cargo flows, but also for the development of Siberia and other regions. Infrastructure will be developed, including communications and transport. In 2024, at least 85% of roads in urban localities and also municipal roads will be brought up to the national standard, and I'm confident that we will achieve this target. Gasification, free of charge for households, will now be expanded to social facilities such as kindergartens and healthcare facilities, and this will be a program that will be constantly available for people. You will always be able to apply to have a gas connection, to have your house connected to the grid. A larger program of construction and repairs for housing and utilities infrastructure will be carried out. 4.5 trillion rubles will be invested in that over a period of 10 years. It's important for this program to start with a strong momentum. So I ask the government to provide the necessary financing right away. We need to strengthen our industry, so we have the industrial mortgage instrument. Subsidized loans will be available for buying sites to construct manufacturing facilities and also to modernize existing facilities. And this will be a great contribution. These loans will be up to 500 million rubles, and the rates will be 3 to 5%, and they will be provided for a term up to 7 years. I think that is truly a great start. Starting this year, we'll be reducing fiscal and administrative burdens for resident companies and industrial clusters, and they will receive subsidies from the state and long-term state procurement contracts. By 2030, we will ensure 10 trillions worth of projects to be implemented, and we expect that about 2 trillion will be invested in the nearest period, and those are the targets that we have, and I request the government to accelerate the launch of these projects and to provide systemic support measures, including tax benefits, to the companies that need it. I know that our financial ministry and agencies love various benefits and various rules, and I know that they like to invent new rules, but I think this is the case where these new rules might be beneficial. Starting this year, Russian companies will be able to reduce their income tax if they buy modern Russian IT solutions and artificial intelligence products, and this will be considered with a multiplier of 1.5 relative to the actual costs, and I think the tax benefits will be expanded so that people who buy Russian high-tech products can benefit from additional tax reduction mechanisms and use simplified procedures. Next. Yes, that is truly a great solution that will help our economy. An important issue on our economic agenda is finding new sources of investment, and we've talked about that. Russia has a strong payment balance. It does not need to lend any money from other countries, and so we don't have to worry about how to repay our debt. Russian banks are stable and sustainable. They have a good reserve. Last year, loans to corporate entities actually grew. There were many concerns about potential troubles, but we have seen a growth. And it grew by 14%, which is more than in 2021, when there was no military operation. In 2021, it grew by 11.7%, and now we see a growth of 14%. The total sum of mortgages grew by 24.4%, and the bank sector as a whole ended the year with a profit. Of course, it was not so much as it was before, but it was 203 billion rubles, which is another indicator of the sustainability of our system. In the second quarter of 2023, inflation will reach the target of 4%, or at least come close to that. In some countries, we're seeing 17 or 18 or even 20%, and we have 4, well, maybe 5. The central bank and the finance ministry have differing assessments, but we're still getting close to the target. Considering this and the positive dynamics of other macroeconomic indicators, we are shaping our strategy with regard to long-term credit rates, and I think that loans must be more accessible across the country. The long-term savings of people need to be more sustainable, and I request the government to accelerate the introduction of draft laws, to launch a state program in April this year to create better conditions for people to invest and to earn money domestically, and we must secure the people's savings and retirement funds. So we need to ensure effective insurance for people's deposits. I think we have a good program to ensure people's investments, and I think we should have even better conditions for pension funds. We must also protect people's use of longer-term investment tools, and including ensuring against bankruptcy and additional support is needed to bring in more capital to growing businesses. They must have access to domestic stock exchanges on better terms, and terms should be better both for companies and for buyers of shares. And the freedom of entrepreneurship is a very important aspect. All the attempts to contain Russia and to limit Russia showed that Russia is able to adapt and grow in difficult conditions. So every initiative that aims to help the country must be supported. And I think it is a good step to revise some criminal law provisions concerning the economic crimes. The state is reviewing the situation in this area, and we should not ignore the crimes that happen, but we should not have an excessively punitive approach, and we will have a consistent and good work in this regard, and I request the government to work with the parliament and to suggest additional measures to accelerate the de-offshorization of the economy. Businesses and key sectors of the economy must operate in the Russian jurisdiction. This should be the basic principle. And in this regard, colleagues, I will just add a little philosophical part. So what I wanted to say is we remember the problems and imbalances that the late Soviet economy faced. So after the dissolution of the Soviet Union and its planned economy and the chaos of the 90s, the country started to create a new economy based on market relations and private property. And it took its lessons from Western countries. There were many countries who wanted to advise, and we thought that it was sufficient to just copy their models. Though I remember that the Europeans and the Americans had some disputes on how the Russian economy should develop. But what did we get? The Russian national economy became West-oriented to a large extent, and it was mostly viewed as a source of raw commodities, and the reason for that is clear. The Russian business, which was mostly oriented towards getting a quick profit, like businesses are wont to do, and the best source of a quick profit was found in selling natural resources, such as oil and other resources. So they didn't think about long-term investment. So the more value-added sectors of the economy only developed weakly, and we needed to break this trend and to reverse it. We had to restructure the system of governance to support investment, and we do have substantial results. But we need to remember the situation where our big businesses developed and evolved. Western companies had access to capital, and the best markets were in the West, and so capital started flowing to the West. And so, instead of modernizing production facilities, instead of creating new jobs here in Russia, companies spent their money to buy elite housing abroad, and business people tried to invest in luxury purchases, and they tried to be rich and to show it off. And of course, having connected themselves to the West so much, they sent their children abroad to study, and it became very hard to disassociate from the West, because we lived in a Western paradigm economically. The West started to be seen as a safe haven and a place where you could always land. It turned out to be an illusion, and those who planned their future in the West and wanted to go there after they get enough money were ultimately scammed out of their money. I remember that I said, speaking to representatives of the Russian businesses, that they would face a lot of trouble trying to get their riches back in various offices in the West, and that's how it turned out. And now I will add one simple thought. None of the ordinary citizens of Russia had any pity for those who lost their money in Western banks.
They do not feel bad for those who lost their mansions and yachts.
That was the Russian President Vladimir Putin's address ahead of the one-year anniversary of the Ukraine war. In rare comments, Putin has conceded that there were problems in the Russian war effort, but several important points coming there. Vishnu, what are the highlights that you're picking up?
I think the bottom line over here is that Putin says that slowly and consistently he's going to achieve his war aims. The bottom line in that is that this war isn't going away anytime fast. Interestingly, he's spoken about building a corridor with countries which include India. So we're going to be looking at all of that. But as far as the war, peace plan, nothing very substantive seems to have emerged.
Right, of course, we'll get you the details and the top highlights from this very important speech on the other side of this very short break. Stay tuned.